Gavin, Sandra Hess here, DTC Wine Workshops.
Good morning, Sandra. How are you?
Really well. Thanks so much for taking some time with me today to chat about the latest in winery e-commerce websites. I know that you've been designing websites in the Greater Napa Valley as well as throughout California nationally since 2001. So I'm really excited to hear from you today about some key tips that wineries want to keep in mind as they are now going through a lot of website updates. We were seeing more and more mobile websites and more customers requesting website upgrades to go responsive. So in today's competitive e-commerce world, what I'd like to find out from you, first of all, what are the top 3 things that you're seeing as you're working with wineries as the most impactful, most needed tools as they're making these winery upgrades or winery website upgrades?
Well, you mentioned one in your introduction to that question. Responsive is certainly one of the biggest concerns these days. Every statistic I see shows an increasing number of mobile devices being used to access websites in every industry, whether it's wine or whether it's restaurants or in any retail application. So it's really crucially important. And then I don't know if you heard about the term Google Apocalypse, where Google changed their algorithm for search results recently and said, we're going to start penalizing you if you don't have a workable, responsive website. So people who think, oh, we're okay, we've got an older site, it's just HTML, it may have Flash on it, they're going to find that they may have placed first for a long time on a certain keyword and suddenly their search results start dropping. So I think that anytime you don't keep your website up to the standards that the search engines expect, you may be costing yourself business. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. There's also other ramifications of that, such as the use of Flash. Certainly anybody who still has Flash on their website should really think seriously about degrading that or changing that rather to HTML5 or some technology where if they have video or something like that on the site that needs to be displayed with Flash, that they get it on devices like, well, I'm talking to you on my iPad, and if you have Flash on your website, I cannot see it on my iPad. So that's a concern.
I see.
And the other concerns, really, the biggest thing to me that stands out about a winery website is that you know how to tell your story, that you know what your story is, and that you tell it well. And you also have to tell it in stages. In the web is not a linear structure where you tell a story from beginning to end. It's told in hierarchies. So you need to be able to tell your story in 1 or 2 sentences. This is what we do, this is where we are, this is who we are. As simple as that. Because the attention of the person going on the web is extremely brief. I've seen statistics showing that the initial view of a website can be as low as 10 seconds for many people. Certainly it's under a minute. So anything you do on your website, you have to be thinking about quickly stating what you are, where you are, and why you do it. And then you can drill down to more information. You need to know what your story is. There's a lot of wineries out there selling, for example, Napa Cabernet Sauvignon. What makes your story interesting? What makes your wine interesting? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you can't share the wine online, but you can tell your story, who you are, how you got there, what you came to be. That could be a particular vineyard that has a unique quality that nobody else has. That could be your personal background as a vintner. It could be the celebrity winemaker that you're using, and he may make this cult wine, but he also makes 500 cases of this special wine that you're selling. So whatever it is, you have to find how to tell that story, and you have to tell it well. You need to make sure that if it's being told in photographs, that your photography is professional. It's not something you took with your iPhone. Mm-hmm. If it's being told in words, well, if you're a great writer, all good. But if you're not, you might want to consider having professionals write that story. Same thing with video. Have it done by people who know what they're doing and can help you tell the story. And then in terms of the third trend, I think that always, I kind of touched on this before, but always cleanness, brevity, the simplicity of the message, and making sure that the guest on your website sees what's there and figures out what's going on quickly. You don't want people fumbling to find out, how do I get to buy my wine? How do I put it in the shopping cart? You always want to make it as simple a process as you can for the guests. And the difficult thing of that is you have a wide range of consumer experience. If you're selling to only millennials, then good for you. Maybe you have a more sophisticated target audience. But if you're selling to boomers and people who are older than boomers, you got to make sure that they know where that purchase button is.
Mm-hmm. So that's a really good point that you bring up, and I hear this a lot when it comes to the navigation piece of the winery website, that you should really aim for a maximum of 5 main tabs in the navigation bar, because more and more people, are busy. They're coming in through tablets or smartphones. They're on the go, and then to your point with baby boomers, they want simplistic, clean navigation. And then under those 5 main tabs, having some sub-tabs. Do you think that is a best practice?
I do think it's a best practice. I also think that the placement of the items is very important. If, for example, let's say you have a trade page. When I first started doing websites, I would meet people who worked in the trade who were constantly asking me, why isn't there a trade page on your site? Where is it? I can't find it. And yes, you need to have that. But if the primary purpose of your site is direct to consumer sales, or even information for customers who happen to be buying from a restaurant or a wine shop, you need to have the first 3 items, and maybe the item far on the right be the most important items, which is generally the wines and or purchase button, your homepage button if you include one, and some sort of contact. And then it could be also, you have to figure out, like I said, what your story is and what your mission is. For some wineries who are virtual wineries, the sales and the story are most important, so you stack that on the left. It may be that you're getting most of your business from in-house visitors. So you have a bricks and mortar winery, then your visit tab might be the most important item on the nav bar, and also just telling people where you are and what your phone number is, because you often have people who are driving up and down Napa Valley trying to figure out where a certain winery is. You need to make sure that when they pull up the site on their phone number is right there, the address is right there, and they can hopefully press a button on their phone to bring up a map or to initiate a call.
Great. I understand exactly what you're saying. My husband and I do quite a bit of traveling in the wine industry and wine country, and it's kind of half and half for what we see right now, where half of the winery websites we can get that really nice Google map integrated right into our iPhones, and it's easy breezy, and others it's really hard to even find the address or the phone number. So that is a really, I think, key point that you make about clean navigation and having the main thing be the main thing. So next up, I'd like to, you've touched on video a little bit, and I'm seeing the end of 2014, first quarter here this year, many wineries testing out video on their websites to be more informational, to really connect that genuine brand story. And I'm also seeing videos used in email marketing campaigns. What is appropriate, I guess, for the length of a video, and where should a video be placed within a winery website?
Well, it's kind of a new thing for me too. I don't have that many clients who are that heavily invested in video at this point. Where I see video being most useful for a winery is when you're trying to bring in visitors and you want to show that you have a unique tasting room experience or a unique winery experience in terms of your caves or any other feature that you have. I also think anytime you want to show people what the experience looks like, whether it's a luxury hotel or a restaurant or a winery, I think it's really appropriate. In some cases, it can be appropriate. I have one client who has a very low-tech winery. They actually have no e-commerce, and they don't accept any visitors at all to the website, to the winery, except for once a year. And yet they have an extremely special historic vineyard that they want to share with people. And so they do a lot of videos just to show people, this is what we're about. This is what this vineyard looks like that you've heard about and you've read about, and it helps people make a connection to that and possibly make a purchase, even though it's not an online purchase. So I think it's good for that. I think the danger is, though, I do some, we all who work in the internet or have computers or surf other subjects, and I look at a few other websites, who are in sports or politics or whatever, and I see a lot of resistance to video where people, I saw a comment on a sports board the other day that really struck me, and it was somebody said, oh, I clicked on that link, and when the video popped up, I stopped. I immediately clicked back
Mm.
because the story teased, here are the four best players in the upcoming amateur baseball draft, and you wanted to go to that story and see this guy, this guy, this guy, this shortstop, and this is who the Giants are going to draft or whatever, and yet you get two talking heads babbling on about what they think, and that there's a certain resistance there. So I would say one of the most important things with video is to make it a choice. I talked before about the hierarchies of content. You want to make sure that the video is something that you're offering to your website visitor when they want to see that level of content.
Got it.
There are exceptions, however. There are some sites that have, especially if you look at motion picture sites, they'll have subtle background videos playing. It can be a really cool effect, create atmosphere, but I think you need to be judicious about it. And I think that in the winery business, you need to make sure that your content focuses on your product and what you're selling, and not trying to do style for style's sake. Just like years ago, people used to do flash sites where, like, Frog Sleep had a little thing where you chase the frog around. Well, it was really kind of cool, but it wasn't selling them any wine. So I think you need to make sure that your video is accomplishing what you want for your guest when they visit.
That's a great point. So along that line, obviously, using video to tell a story to really connect a genuine brand story, but then looking at ways that it's converting, whether it's first-time visitors to the website or maybe club members, converting them to take some kind of an action. And so, the ROI behind that, I know with Google Analytics now, you can really get more detailed information on, who's clicking on the video from where, how long are they staying within the video to watch that, and then are they clicking through to take any other actions following that. So as we wrap up on the video conversation, how often do you think that wineries using video should refresh the video content?
Well, I think you need to refresh any content that you have as often as you can. I don't think there's any exceptions to that. The only problem with video is that it tends to be a more expensive thing to refresh, because if you're bringing in outside people, obviously you have to pay them. But content that is fresh is what brings people back. So I would say, if you're using video, if there's something iconic and classic, like the vineyard video that I described, maybe every quarter or every season is appropriate. Or if your point about wine clubs is great. If you want to show what's special about your winery and being a member there, and you get to go to a certain winemaker dinner or a certain cave tour or something, anytime you can continue to show benefits of membership of a club, I think that's appropriate. So, my answer to that would be the same as any sort of, if we talk about Facebook posts or Twitter or anything, as often as you possibly can, without expending all your resources at once. I don't know if you want to talk about other updating at the same time as video, but I had a client last year who started out on Facebook and was doing a great job. They were just crushing it with really timely posts every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day. Well, what happened, you can guess. They went through a month of just absolutely getting all kinds of engagement on Facebook and people engaging with them, but they blew their wad at that point. They had nothing left after a month, and they didn't post for 6 months after that. You need to set a schedule that really is reasonable of what your expectation is. If you start a blog and post 5 posts in your first week and then don't do another post for 6 months, you really haven't done yourself any favors in terms of engaging your consumers. They forgot about you.
Sure.
It would have been better to take those 5 posts and space them out over those 6 months.
And make sure that you have content that is really concise, appealing, that there's going to be some strong call to actions. I think that sometimes, you hear that use of the word noise when it comes to social media and content, and there's a lot more noise now when it comes to the connected consumer, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, you're subscribing to different blogs, so you're getting those in your inbox every morning. And so I think it's more and more important now than ever for wineries, as they're differentiating themselves, to set up custom messaging by customer type, whether it's first time, repeat visitors, club members, and that it's impactful. So, the blog versus social posts, is it really impactful? Are you seeing good interaction? Are you seeing good return on investment? And if not, then, it's probably a good idea to rework that schedule.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, great. So I wanted to get your input on call to actions. And so, working with Vin65 and other e-commerce platforms and really learning about what's working with their use of A/B testing, in some cases against 1,200 wineries, we can see what most consumers opt into doing based on different buttons or call to actions. Um, but I want to get your thoughts on how many call to actions do you think should appear, first of all, on the homepage?
Well, I think less is more in most cases. I think that you need to prioritize what's really most important to you. If, for example, you have a tasting room and you also have a wine club, that's one and two. If you'd like to have people sign up for a mailing list, that's also great, but I wouldn't clutter things up with that when I really know what I need is for people to come visit my winery and I need for people to join my wine list. Again, you have the attention span issue, and you also have the issue where there are just so many websites with too much going on. I want to see things a little bit more simple. And I also want to keep things within the, and Vin65 has a lot of clients, but they're at various levels. I tend to work with a lot of small wineries. I'm not opposed to working with large wineries, but the way that a winemaker's private label wants to approach sales may be different from somebody who's selling 100,000 cases of wine a year. For example, for me, I would love to see a new release on the home page with a purchase button. Yes, we just released this wine. You can press here and put it in a shopping cart. I mean, I think that's the best call to action in the world. I mean, that's the purpose of the direct-to-consumer site, right? But the winemaker may have a different feel. He's got a much more soft sell idea, elegance, an exclusive product. You don't want to be blaring in your face. So your call to actions, I think, need to be a little more subtle than they are in other businesses and not as big and as graphic as you may find in other businesses. And nothing that pops up at you, nothing that is too in your face. I think that it's a softer sell in most cases.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, when I'm looking at, winery e-commerce sites that are really just set up beautifully, they're eye-pleasing, the navigation process is friendly, it's intuitive. I hear what you're saying. I don't get that feeling of, in my face, aggressive, flash sales, buy now, buy now. It's more of a feeling of the winery has done a great job, or the designer developer has done a great job of explaining to me how they want me to navigate. So whether it's from the home page to clicking on a reservation tool to explore the VIP tasting experiences, whether they're wanting me to check out some of their new releases or maybe look at the club options. I've seen some really smooth use of navigation tools to get me from point A to point B. Any thoughts there on things that you're seeing work or maybe not work when it comes to navigation from the home page to the various pages throughout?
Well, I think, again, you need to always know where you are. You have to never be lost. There are techniques such as breadcrumbs you can use for that. I think that you're looking for an intuitive experience. I think that it's important, you mentioned testing, it's important to look at the site through the eyes of other people. If you can afford to hire a test group to look at a site, I think that's a great way to go. Another thing is that a lot of the navigation we talk about, the path to purchase, is kind of hardwired into a particular e-commerce platform. So I think that it's important when you choose what e-commerce platform you want to be on that the basic path to purchase is something that you feel works well for consumers and that you're comfortable with. And so I would talk to anybody who's redoing their site or starting a new site. The most important thing to do is to look at other websites. And for feel, it's often, I'll tell people, don't look at winery websites necessarily. Go look at luxury hotels. Go look at luxury cars. Go look at resorts. Go look at restaurants. Look at perfumes. Look at fashion. Look at other industries that have similar consumers, where people are spending discretionary income and they're finding things that they like. And find out what you like, what the feel is. And it's kind of the same thing with the navigation. I would look at websites that are using Vin65, and I'd also look at websites that are using VineSpring or Cultivate or Nexternal or custom built e-commerce if you can afford it, and see what works for you. Because one of the things that you're limited by, if you is wonderful a platform is something like Vin65 is, you really can't say, oh, I would rather give the credit card 2 steps before you do it. That path to purchase takes millions of dollars to develop, and well, not necessarily millions, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. So it's not something that can be easily redone.
Sure.
But as you mentioned, they have Vin65 is up to just for example. I don't mean to say that the other platforms aren't good as well, but they have, I think, 1,000 winery websites. They've done a lot of research on what works, and so you can leverage that research into knowing that what you're doing is actually, if you go with that platform, is actually a pretty intuitive way of selling wine, and it's not just they decided, oh, well, let's do it this way for the heck of it. They did some research, and they've got a lot of experience indicating what is successful for the wineries that they're working with.
And I do really appreciate the fact that they share their A/B testing results, that they're consistently looking at A/B testing results against their 1,200 or so wineries and making that available to the customers, to the designers, the developers, so that as you're getting together and putting together scope of work for a winery website redesign or maybe a new website design, you know what you have to work against, and you know what the best practices are as well. For setting up that new site. And so I know that you build on Vin65, you know the back end really well, so you know how to then best set up the front end of that website to maximize those back end e-commerce tools. And I think that's a really important point of today's conversation as well. I get asked a lot of questions about website designers and developers specific to wineries, and that's a key piece of the pie, I think, when wineries are going through the evaluation process and the vetting process, is to really ask questions about, does the designer know how to build on these winery e-commerce platforms? And if so, let's look at some of the websites you've done, and let's talk about what some of your best practices are. So I think you've touched on something really important there. So as we wrap up in today's interview, I always like to leave the audience with your top 3 words of wisdom, your top 3 key takeaways that a winery wants to keep in mind as they're thinking about either a website upgrade, redesign, or maybe they're a brand new winery getting started. What would you like to leave them with?
Well, that's a good question. I would say I'll repeat myself a little bit. Number 1 is tell your story. Be true to yourself. The technology is really important, but it's not as important as what you do, the hard work, interacting with clients. We've mentioned building mailing lists, and it's great to have a call to action to have a mailing list, but nothing builds a mailing list like going out and pouring wine and tasting with your distributors, tasting with your retail accounts, tasting at winemaker dinners. That kind of hard work is what creates a customer base. And then to segue into another one is keep in mind that a website is not a tool that you just turn on and suddenly the money flows out of it. It takes hard work to build it, to make sure it works right, to make sure it tells your story well, and it takes hard work to keep it fresh, keep it updated, make sure that your wines are sold out on the site when they're sold out, make sure that when you have a new release it's on there. It's not something that you just can make and put away. So I think currency is a really, really important thing. And then the other thing is, as the tools become more powerful, leverage the tools that the website gives you. For example, we've talked about Vin65 and what a great platform it is, and they're constantly creating new tools. They have something, they have a little feature whereby if you add 3 bottles of wine to your cart, and let's say shipping 3 bottles costs $20. But shipping 6 bottles also costs $20. They have a little tool that can let a message pop up and say, hey, you've got 3 bottles in your cart. Why not add 3 more? You get the same shipping rate. So leverage those tools and make sure that you're getting the best out of that you can. Sure. And also keep the customer interaction. You can go and look at your Vin65 control panel and see where people drop their shopping carts and not consummated a purchase. Well, if you're fortunate and they've logged onto the site, you know who they are, and you can send them an email either automatically or in person, or pick up the phone and say, hey, what can we do? And chances are, one thing we haven't talked about is shipping. A lot of the problem is how much the shipping costs. If I need new ink for my printer, or new paper or pens or all sorts of things, I just go on Amazon and free shipping, boom. When people see how much wine shipping costs, it's a real issue. So I think anything you can do to help mitigate that issue for the consumer is like 3.5 for me. I think that I've seen people have enormous success even on very low-tech sites if they only make the shipping painless for people.
Yes.
So,
you touch on a very important point there, John, and thank you so much for bringing that up. I subscribe to e-commerce today, and so I have a daily feed that comes in, and it's really important for me to stay on top of that and share my knowledge with our customer base. The number one cart abandonment reason that we're still seeing is that shipping rates were not disclosed early enough in the online shopping process. And so having the shipping rate calculator at the product page, letting the online buyer know, okay, first of all, does this winery ship to my state? And if so, what am I looking at? Is it a flat rate program for 3 bottles or a case, or is this going to far exceed what I can afford? And so when you spend, 3 to 5 minutes in the shopping cart, you get to that checkout page, you've invested this time, and you find out that I can't have the wine shipped to me, or it's going to be way too expensive, that is a negative e-commerce shopping experience. So you're absolutely right. That's a big piece of the pie when addressing any type of website updates or website builds.
Absolutely.
Well, you've been really wonderful in sharing your expertise, your insights. Having you as a member of the DTC Consultant Network, now 16 specialists serving wineries nationally, is just really a treat. And so if anybody is watching this video and wants to connect with John Gavin, visit dtcwineworkshops.com, visit the Consultant Network tab, meet the team, fill out a contact form, and he is offering a half-hour online consultation to chat with you about what your website design and e-commerce goals are. So again, John, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.